Hi everyone, it's Laura here, and in today's video I'm going to share with you how to create a beautiful summer card and how to color realistic faces using your alcohol markers. The products I'll be using today are this gorgeous stamp set by LDRS Creative. It's called Heatwave and I think it's absolutely beautiful. And I'm going to pair it with this die set which is called Scalloped Rectangle Frames. As a first step, I die cut some alcohol-friendly cardstock using one of the rectangles in the die set, and then I'm going to stamp the image with this beautiful girl on the panel. I'm stamping it on the bottom right corner of my panel, and I'm using LDRS Creative Raven Black Hybrid ink. I'm going to stamp it a couple of times so that I get a nice and crisp impression, and then I can go ahead and start coloring the image with my alcohol markers. The principles that we'll be discussing today can be applied with any coloring mediums. This was just the medium of choice for me today. What I did is I started with my lightest marker and I started mapping out the shadow areas. This is because I wasn't exactly sure where I wanted my shadows to fall, and I wanted to make sure that I would create the right shapes on this beautiful face. So by starting with the lighter marker, I can tune the shapes and the shadows more easily than I could if I went in directly with my darkest one. Once I was pretty confident with the placement of the shadows, I went in with my darkest marker and I basically just went over those areas. Generally speaking, the darkest areas will be the ones that are furthest away from us, and the lighter ones will be the ones that are closest to us. So, for example, the tip of her nose is protruding with respect to her face, and that will be a highlight area. Her cheekbones are also protruding with respect to the eye sockets, which are sort of, there is a hollow in the skull, right? So the eye sockets themselves will be a shadow area, whereas the cheekbones and the cheek area will be a highlight area. The bridge of her nose will be a little bit darker than her forehead, which is again an area that I'm leaving empty for my highlights, and I will also have some shadows right at the edges of her face because that's where the face curves away from us. Because I wasn't super happy with the shape I created on her nose, I went back in with my darker marker and my mid-tone marker and tried to make it a little bit slimmer. And by the way, the video is sped up with respect to my normal coloring speed, but if you want to, you can use the tools on YouTube to watch it a little bit slower in case you want to see all the details of the coloring. For the second part of the coloring, I decided to speed up the video a little bit more because this is nothing different from what I usually do. The thing that was a little bit unusual for me was to color this realistic type of face as opposed to the more cutesy designs that you can see more often on my channel. So I wanted the focus to be a little bit more on that part of the coloring. This was also my first time coloring a subject like this. As I said, I have usually more type of doodly designs on my cards, and I have to say that it was a very nice challenge and a lot of fun. It's really rewarding when you try something new and it comes out nice, right? So I encourage you to try it out too. And by the way, this is one of 4 stamp sets by LDRS Creative. There is one for each season and they're all really gorgeous in my opinion. So I link to all of them in the description box down below together with the supplies that I used because I really think they're worth checking out. For the color palette, I basically took some inspiration from pictures on Pinterest. There wasn't a specific one, otherwise I would have linked it down below, but basically I just googled Boho summer color palette and I was inspired to use these more muted colors. And except from the muted blue that I'm using, the rest of the palette is rather warm because, well, this is a summer card and I thought warm colors would go nicely there. For the hair, I decided to use some very light browns, and I am starting with my lighter one, adding some flicking motions to create some texture and some movement on the hair. Once all the area is covered, I can then go in with my darker marker and deepen the shadows a little bit more. And then as a very last step, I went in with a colored pencil to add some finer lines and again to deepen the shadows just a little bit. And this is a very nice trick to color hair or fur on top of your alcohol markers, or also just to add some shadows in some very small areas. Colored pencils give you a lot of control in that respect. Alright, so the coloring was over and I went ahead and stamped the sentiment, which is also part of the Heatwave stamp set. And then I decided to frame the image using again my alcohol markers, this time using some coral shades. I started with a darker shade, which I laid down all around the image, and then I used a couple of other markers to blend that out towards the white. As a last step, I softened up the edges with my colorless blender, and then I used it to create some little dots all around the girl. This will basically bleach the markers that I have laid down already and will create some really soft and subtle dots all around her, which I thought was a nice touch to add some interest to this background. I die cut some dark grey cardstock using another of the dies in the Scalloped rectangle frame die set by LDRS Creative, and I glued the panel with the girl directly on top. I used a white jelly roll pen to create some white wavy line. This is really easy to do and you don't have to be precise at all. That's all the point of this. And as a last step, I started working on my card base. I wanted to bring those coral reds back into the card base, and so I used those same 3 markers that I used around the girl to basically color in my card base. Because these are alcohol markers, they will bleed on the back of your panel, so basically inside your card base. If you mind, you can just do this on a separate A2 sized white panel and then glue everything on your card base. But for today, I worked directly on my card base and I think it's fine. To tie in the card base with our focal panel, I decided to add those same dots with the colorless blender all around the edges where I have just laid down my markers, and then I could adhere everything together. As a final touch, I decided to use my metallic jelly roll pens to add some shimmer to this card, and I think this is really what made this card look even more beautiful. I used copper, silver and gold in different areas, so I have the copper on all the details of the girl that are colored either in pink or in orange, and silver on the feathers. I used the copper one also to create a stitched detail all around the card base. This will add some shine there and will also fill in that area a little bit more. And then lastly, I decided to use some gold on her hair, just in selected areas, so I'm not going over the entire area. And this will make her hair look golden and beautiful. And here is the final result. I promise that in person it's even more gorgeous with those shiny details, and as I said, I really love the style of this stamp set. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. If you did enjoy this video, you can let me know in the comments down below or with a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, you can subscribe to my channel for more inspiration. Also, don't forget to check out the description box down below for the supplies used today. Thank you all so much for stopping by and have a great day.